Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu, salamu, rasulullah, assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to We Are All Okay. No, it's not We Are All Okay Wednesday. It's too early in the morning, Daniela. It's actually Friday live. It's the Friday live interview with Daniela. You'd think that the fact that I could see her here, I would know that. Alhamdulillah, but that's okay. We get it off on the right foot a second time. Welcome, Daniela, to Friday live interview.
Walaikum assalam, and thanks. It's good to be here on this early morning.
Yes, so we're both here in Adelaide. In fact, Daniela only lives like 15 minutes drive up the road from me. So alhamdulillah, we're both in the same time zone. And Daniela is also one of my coaches and mentors from the Back to the Fitrah Academy. So one of my certified coaches and also our customer support person. So it's really cool that we're at this stage that we actually have customer support people. Alhamdulillah. So she gets to hang out with me in the office a couple of times a week, and it's really cool that we get to do that. Yeah. But today we want to chat about what the sorts of things we teach and understand and how they impact our world. And especially for Daniela, it's been something, this understanding has really helped her stand up, advocate when it comes to standing up to health professionals and leadership in schools and things like that when things aren't being done well. And this is something I think women struggle with often quite a lot, feeling like maybe we're making too much of a fuss or being silly, or we know in our heart that something isn't right and we need to stand up for it, but somehow feel disempowered to do so. And that's certainly been one of the things that you've discovered through our understanding of the inside out paradigm, right, Daniela?
Yeah, it is. Advocating, it's been a big issue for me because, prior to having this understanding, if I was to stick up for, myself and my family, perhaps it wasn't done in the best way in the best way. So, this understanding has been able to allow me to do that, like, as Catherine said, with health professionals and, school authorities and stuff and people like that, which, prior to this understanding, I would never even have thought about questioning doctors, or if I did, it was sort of, no, that's not right, especially with doctors. I remember with my, when my mum was ill, I questioned her specialist about different things, and no, like, you can't do that, and and I never, I tried to stick up for her, but I was sort of brushed aside type thing. But then when it came to my husband having a heart attack, which was, quite a shock for us. And yes, like in that initial emergency, I wasn't questioning at all. And, that's quite normal. They're there for emergencies. But then when it came to the treatment of the ongoing treatment, that's when my questioning and, sticking up for my husband came in. And, now he questioned because of a lot of after, symptoms of different things. I'm like, well, maybe it shouldn't be like that. It should be like this, what do you think? And, then he goes back and questions the doctors. But, there's certain doctors that he won't allow me to go into. Because I've stood up for him, and that's been a big issue for him, that's been a big issue. I'll just leave it there.
That's probably a good place to leave it. And it's a tricky thing, isn't it? That sometimes intuitively we know something's not right, but when you're dealing with someone where it's their expertise, it's very hard to question that. And
That's right.
especially when they can come back at with you with a whole lot of information that, you know, is beyond our expertise to understand, but we still just know intuitively that there's something else, or that's not quite right, or maybe there's a different way. And we just want people to be more open-minded and just think about those questions and look into them. So have you come across, let's just focus on the medical field first, because then we'll talk about schools afterwards. In the medical area, did you find it hard sometimes? Like, did you have to really persist sometimes to get them to really look at other angles or perspectives?
Well, it was more to do with diet, and you know how our
Okay.
diet can change. How if we change our diet, our well-being is a lot better.
Yes.
And you know, there's also other ways to, you know, not curing, but you know, what's the word? Treating this, you know, heart, you know, the chronic heart, the heart after.
Yeah.
So, you know, the diet was a big thing. And also, I do say to him a lot, oh, you just sort of, you know, when he's thinking, I'll go back, sorry, I'll go back. When he's thinking a lot, oh, I've got pain or whatever, I'll just say, you're just thinking it, but it might not actually be real. Like it's, you might feel that it's real and it's exasperating because you're thinking it even more. And then when I get him out of that thought mode, he's able to go, okay, yeah, it's all right, I'm okay, type thing. But with the diet, yeah, that's been a big issue. So that's been one that we've like.
Yeah, because unfortunately, a lot of what is shared as a, even from our government level here, is out of date, isn't it, as far as what we should and shouldn't be eating. And there's so many things about our food chain that you know, have been contaminated now, which are exacerbating these problems. And I know you're someone who's made yourself aware of those things and made a lot of changes in your life to be more healthy. So I can understand where you could probably see that there is a natural alternative to taking a whole bunch of drugs, for instance, for certain things. But it's really tough because for your husband, I'm sure, you know, especially from what you just explained about his nervousness about feeling the pain. I mean, obviously that led to him going through the experience of, you know, having the heart attack and therefore being in an emergency situation. So you can imagine the thinking that kicks in, and the fear that someone would have to trust something other than the doctor's expertise. So yeah, so I can only imagine the battle that's been to be in the middle of all of that.
It's been a tough one, but alhamdulillah, like now he's questioning maybe I should go to, he's questioning doctors, or not so much well, I guess the doctors. I'll tell you one thing in a moment. But the side effects of the drugs that he's given. So now he's like, alhamdulillah, he's now been able to go see an alternative doctor, or like a naturopathic doctor, which I think we've spoken about before. And with that, he's like, oh, finally someone who understands without pushing, you know, drugs and stuff like that on me. So that's been a real
breakthrough.
Yes, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, and it's similar when it comes to school as well, isn't it? So we know our children, but often we come to grief when it's like dealing with the school system and what's going on. And you've had your fair share of those battles as well to fight, haven't you?
Yes, just to a fair share.
Alhamdulillah. So, obviously, because we don't know, who's watching on Facebook, we're not going to name names or anything like that, but it would be really helpful, I think, to some mums out there who might feel that their child is having a tougher time than they need to at school, be able to go and speak to people or feel empowered to speak to people at the school to make change. Can you share a little bit about, I think what might be helpful is share what you were experiencing from your son at home, and then how you came to understand what was going on, and then how you were able to tackle it.
Yeah. Well, last year was I'll say a difficult year. And at home, there was lots of, it was always straight after school, lots of battles, fighting, arguing, and, whatnot, not fighting, but, just arguing. He was off track. And then he would always tell me what was going on. So, alhamdulillah, like, he's very open. Like, once he's back on track, he's able to then tell me exactly what's going on at school. So he was and I felt this as well before he'd even said anything. But there was somebody at the school who was sort of targeting Noah. What's that his name? Sorry, just targeting you.
Okay. You only mentioned your son's name, no one else's.
Just targeting him. I'll just leave it at that, as targeting him. And he said, "Ma, I don't understand how come I am being picked on and others aren't." So then I made the approach to the school, to this particular teacher, and I said, what was going on, and if you have a problem, tell me. And she was trying to, again, pinpoint my son. I'm like, I'm sorry, you've said enough. And I just said, that's not okay for you to speak to my son like that, or to me. And she was just really trying to belittle me, like as if I didn't know, and that it was all in my head and all in my son's head. Anyway, with that, I then went to see the principal, and I said, my husband and we said, look, if she's got a problem, that's okay, but don't take it out on my son or our son. And if she's got a problem, come and speak to us. And that was a ball changer, because then from after that, she didn't for the rest of the year do that as much, and he ended up going into her class like at the end of last year. So it was, and he was okay. I think because we had settled, kids realize what it was about. He thinks it's about his race, like he's got mixed race. So he thinks it's about that. And so he couldn't understand, like, it's just those little subtlenesses that kids pick up on, and that's indignation. And he was trying to fight that, and he didn't know how to. He was doing it probably in the wrong way. But we were able to bring that back and help him with that. And you need to stick up for your kids. Your kids as best as, and as well as the best. Oh, how do you say it? Better than anyone.
Yeah.
So you've really got.
And it's about being balanced, because we unfortunately have those parents who stick up for their kids even when their kids are wrong. We're not talking about backing our children when they're actually wrong about something,
No.
they've misbehaved about something. But when they come home, and because you were saying there were lots of battles, he was quite angry, and that's symptomatic of a child experiencing injustice. And the injustice he was experiencing was the imbalance, and that is one of the subtle forms of discrimination that anyone can experience. I think they call it microaggressions or something like that, given some name to it. But basically it's where that child is always in trouble more than anybody else. So targeted, as you said, in terms of discipline. But there's other sort of ways in which it unfolds, which is having lower expectations of that child academically. So if the child's struggling, not helping them because it's like, well, that's normal for those kids, or not calling the parents to say, hey, your child is struggling. So these are the sorts of things I've found my kids experienced. And unfortunately, I didn't get much luck with the school when I tried to advocate on behalf of my son. I talked to the teacher involved initially, and she was so patronizing and condescending to me, as if I was, because I wear a scarf, I'm dumb. And it's like I had as I have a degree to be a teacher just like her. I also have a science degree just like her, because she was a science teacher. So then I went to the counselor, and the counselor was very much like, oh yes, all that happened to me when I was a kid too. And one thing I came to understand is adults who have experienced oppression themselves aren't able to advocate for children. So she wasn't able to do anything. She understood, but she didn't affect any change or be helpful at all. So then I finally went to the principal, had an 1.5-hour discussion with this principal, explaining in detail how there was racism running through her school. And she was very much a white sort of owning class type person. At the end of the conversation, she said, basically, if I couldn't name specific names and specific incidents for them to go into detail with, and I said, look, my son won't tell me those details because he's concerned about the repercussions of that. What I'm trying to tell you is there's an underlying racial discrimination problem going on in your school. And she says, I don't see that. So it can be very, very challenging to stand up for your kids sometimes. And alhamdulillah, I've been asked to talk about this. So I think the week after next, we'll be talking about, how to notice when your child is experiencing some kind of injustice. But behavior is the key, isn't it? So I know he was a very angry kid. I remember, he was just angry about everything. And he is so much a different kid now.
He has changed so much this year. Like, we changed the class. He was actually really apprehensive about changing classes as well, but we did change the class. And even he's quite funny, but he's a different kid. He's back to his, I'll say, his normal self. He's fun loving and all the rest. Not that he wasn't last year, but he just had those extra stresses in his own world that we were trying to battle with.
And to let the audience know how old he is, because that might help other parents who are struggling with kids. So he, back then he was what, 8?
No, he'll be 8 in July. So back then he was 6, turning 7.
Okay, so he was quite young. So that's pretty young.
Started even the year before, like when he was just started school, just subtly, and it continued because that same group went over to the same. I'll just leave it there. But it really started the year before, but more so definitely last year.
So that's so there's a lot of beautiful lessons to take from that. One is listen to your children. 2 is your son's very emotionally intelligent to be able to express that at that age, and so for other parents, if your child can't express it, that's okay. Just understand that if you've got a child that's angry all the time, that there's potentially something like that is going on. And number 3 is that there doesn't have to be a kind of like quit the whole school approach to resolving it, that he's still at the same school with the same kids, and that it is possible to resolve these things when you can advocate in a powerful way. And I think this is what we want to get through, you know, to those who are listening, is, you know, where do you find the courage to advocate like that? Because I had a situation with my son last year. Was it last year? Well, it was a while back anyway, where, you know, he had experienced some injustice, and he was normally a peaceful kid when he came home from school. Now he was like turned into a monster. And in the end, for us, this was only like a 3 or 4 day thing. It wasn't like years like you experienced. But in the end, I sort of half figured out what was going on, and so I decided to keep him home from school for a day, connect with him, build that connection. He opened up and explained what was really going on. Then he didn't want me to go and fix it because that would make it worse, and so then we spent more time on it, until by the end of that day he came to me and he said, yeah, okay, you can talk to my teacher about it. And so I rang her, we had a good conversation. She spoke to him and apologized. So I had an opportunity to have a teaching moment about children and what we know about children. And, you know, she hadn't thought about it from that way. And she said, oh, why didn't he say something? And, you know, kids don't feel like they can question authority themselves sometimes too. But the outcome was that he had a wonderful year last year, and it was just these few days. And so being able to see the signs and being able to just have a very calm conversation with someone about what's going on.
That's right.
That's the key. And it's the calm conversation that I think that a lot of people struggle with.
Yes.
So I would love for you to share what shifted for you, or what was different for you, or what do you think is the barrier to being able to go to authority and say, hey, this isn't okay, just sort of in that tone of voice where it's just like firm but not emotional, and really begin the process of change?
Well, it starts with us. And it was when I had this big mental shift, probably towards the end of not last, I started, I think, not last year, but the year before, at the end of the year, but definitely last year. And to know that I wasn't afraid, you know, I was always afraid of being seen or making a fuss. But then when I come to understand that that was just my thinking and I shouldn't be afraid of anyone except for Allah, that just gave me the power to, you know, be my authentic self and speak up for, you know, the people around me, including myself. So it was really that, and knowing that, it was that Allah, you know, I can't be scared of anyone. Yeah,
because when it comes to injustice, it's so important for us to step up. And because Allah forbids injustice upon himself before he does upon us, even, you know, subhanAllah. That's how important it is in Islam. For me, I was always scared I would hurt their feelings. That was where my holding back would come from. I'd have all these issues in, like, oh, I'll hurt, you know, whether I'll upset their feelings or hurt their feelings or offend them or all this kind of thing. And then if I did say something, firstly, it was never done particularly well before. But secondly, I'd feel guilty then afterwards for having stood up for something and like made a fuss, or those sorts of things. And no, for me too, it was understanding what we call separate realities, and knowing that actually if they have feelings, that's coming from their own thinking. I can't hurt their feelings, and that it's more important to be pleasing Allah and enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. Not that we're saying they're being evil, but enjoining the good is probably the better way to suggest that we were advocating in that way. That it just becomes a natural process to do it. You see that something isn't right, so speak up. And
that's right. And the first sorry.
I was just going to say, surprisingly, the outcomes are nothing like we imagined or used to imagine they would be. So go ahead.
I was just going to say the part about separate realities. Last year, I think this is the first time that I'd been able to step up and speak out. That was with the teacher involved. And I'm like, I could hear myself talking in my head, okay, you can do this, don't be afraid. And so I literally said that. And then like I was able to express, whatever it was that was going on. And from then, that really helped me get my voice back. So that was really, a big key thing for me. And to the effect that today I've got to, not got to, but I am speaking up and stepping up and speaking out again, for not just my child, but for the rest of the children. So that will be interesting.
Yes, well, all the best with that one.
Yeah.
We'll see. You can tell me about that after, see how it goes. But before we continue on, I'd like to just say wa alaikum salam to Bilkisu and Amy, and salam alaikum to Sayara and Hadaya and Bint Awais, who are all watching at the moment. And just let you know that if you have any questions for us, make sure you type them now, because there's actually quite a delay between us talking and you hearing it and then you typing and us reading it. So if you've got any questions, start typing them now, otherwise we might wrap it up before you even get your questions out there. But what we're talking about, for those who've just joined us, is where that courage comes from to speak up about what is not okay. And I think this is such a good time to be having this conversation, because there's so much going on in the world that isn't okay, and there's so many people trying really hard to make change that is absolutely necessary, and it's it's very challenging, because some people are doing it in ways that are better than others, and then of course unfortunately, because we have, in the world, some people in power who are ridiculous, to say the least, that they're not getting the support that they deserve. And so it has become a disastrous situation in many places. So I guess what we're talking about is on a very micro scale. What is the solution to what's happening on a really big scale, and how we might, as in you and I, Daniela, might not be able to change things at the top level there, but how, if we change things at our level, at an individual level, that we can start being part of the solution, a very small part. Not suggesting at all that we're the solution, but what we know about the inside out paradigm, I believe, is the solution. Would you agree with that, Daniela?
Definitely. Most definitely agree that it's part of the solution. And if I can just say that, from me having this understanding. Good morning. On my iPad. It's I think it's on the ground next to you. Yeah, it's on the ground next to you. Yeah, it is. It is, mate.
There's the star himself from the show today.
I was going to say, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I think I was going to say something that, you know, from us being our authentic selves, you know, that being that person, and then, you know, that then.
Good morning, Noah. Assalamu alaikum.
She's spoken to you. She said, "Good morning."
Good morning.
You know, he's now having that same sort of terminology. You know, like if I say something, "Oh yeah, Mum, I'm just feeling my feelings at the moment." So like it's that, and then he's able to now walk away from certain scenarios. So that's been amazing, and that snowballs.
Yeah. Wa alaikum salam, Shakira from Canada. Good to have you here. Alhamdulillah. So the way I see it is, or the way I've come to understand it, and especially from my experience, as I said, with the counselor who could very much, she could very much understand the predicament we were in, where my son was being sort of basically picked on by everybody, because that's what she had experienced. Actually, she was from Italian background, like your, you know, family, and so it was that era when it was the Italians' turn to be the ones that were picked on, you know, because we've had various eras of who are the people who have been in the center of it all in Australia. Each wave of migration have had experienced their own. Interestingly, my stepfather migrated here when he was about 11 from England, and even he experienced, because they moved to Port Augusta. People may not know what that means, but we do. And he's experienced a lot of discrimination for being a Pommy B word, as they would call them back then. If you, so it wasn't even necessarily always a skin color thing, but just whichever wave of migration came here, they would experience discrimination or, you know, mocking of some kind. But so what I've come to understand is that when we don't understand how we've internalized oppression ourselves, we actually are disabled from being able to be part of the solution. And it's because we're not able to get to that space of neutral feelings and confidence to speak up in a way that's powerful, and sometimes we would speak up, but it doesn't have that firmness behind it, that the person that you're talking to, not that I'm not suggesting they're evil either, but whoever the oppressor is, you know, obviously most likely usually has their own things going on as well, but they sense the lack of confidence or the internalized impression in the other person, and so the conversation doesn't go well. It ends up being like power struggles or arguments, or, you know, just dissatisfaction on the part of the person that was trying to say something for change. And so what I have experienced myself, so I was a victim all my life as a kid. I, you know, went through abuse as a kid and abuse as a teenager and abuse as an adult. And so I'd internalized being a victim. In fact, I didn't experience being empowered as a person at all. And so any attempt I made to speak up was a dim failure every single time, because I just, the courage or the confidence I was showing, it was just external. It wasn't internal. And so I could get burnt down in flames just with one word from the other person. And then it was like, I'd walk away with my, you know, as they say, as dogs walk away with their tail between their legs, you know, like a bit lost. But what shifted for me, and why now I can have those conversations, and it's really just natural to have the conversation. I don't even have to think hard about it. I make the appointment and I'll just go. I won't even pre-prepare what I'm going to say. I'll have an idea in my mind what the point of what I want to get to in the conversation. but I will be able to go with the flow. I'll be able to sit there and I'll be able to listen to the other person's point of view without getting upset with them, and just see it as, well, that's their reality. And then sometimes I actually see a clue as to why we got into that space. And instead of having to battle or even speak up in the way that I thought I might have to, I can actually come up with a solution and go, oh, so that's what's going on. Oh, well, what if we try this? And then, subhanallah, everyone's on the same page. So it's been really astounding how things have unfolded from me internalizing being a victim to now not, having shed all that internalized oppression I had, to be able to be part of the solution. And so that's why we say this understanding is the solution to what's going on, because we need to all be able to stand up for those that are being oppressed, or any oppression that we see when people try to oppress us, or try to oppress our children, or try to oppress us even in the medical system, like we started the conversation with.
That's right. Anyone, we need to be able to step up and speak our worth without getting into some sort of heated discussion, but say in a natural, calm way, for them to actually realize that, well, even if they don't realize, that's not our problem, but at least for us to step up and advocate for against whatever they're doing.
And it's really powerful in our relationship with our kids, because when our kids know, and sometimes I think people worry that if we do that for our kids, that then it's like they learn to get away with it. It's not like that, because the times we step up for our kids is when there is injustice in place, and they get to, number one, appreciate that injustice happens, witness what you're meant to do about that.
Yes.
And they don't get the opportunity to internalize it themselves, because we've helped them navigate that injustice by stepping in for them when they needed us to.
Yeah.
And then we can actually have very fruitful conversations with them about what that experience was all about, and unpack it for them in a way where it's not about hating the other person, but about understanding that everybody has weaknesses, and and these things happen.
That's right.
The other thing that came to my mind with what you said is that sometimes it doesn't affect change, and that's true. Sometimes we do speak out and it doesn't make any change, but at least we have done our responsibility for the sake of Allah. And for me, what it becomes then is, well, okay, say for instance it was a school, because I did have an experience with one of my children, I've had experiences with all my children once they got to high school. High school has been a minefield for my kids when it comes to this sort of thing. They seem to get through primary school pretty okay, but when they got to high school, it's been horrible. So when you get to a point where it's like, okay, I've said it, we've stood up against it, and they're not going to do anything about it, then it's like, well, it's time for us to make a decision. Let's go. We're not going to stick around for this. And that's when you can just very peacefully and calmly, and my daughter was really comfortable with leaving at that point. She was like, yep, time to go. I'm out of here. And she's in a multicultural school now, where I was sitting one day waiting, like she only had one lesson, so I sat in the car and waited for her. And the bus, because it's a senior school, kids are always coming and going all the time, and about 3 buses pulled up in that time. And in that time, and this is in Adelaide, which is a very white city, really, in terms of multiculturalism, right? We do have, it is multicultural, but still very white, right? Out of 3 bus loads, I think I saw 5 white people. and the rest were from all across the globe, including Buddhist monks in their orange gowns and everything. And I thought, oh wow, am I in a different country? This is amazing. So she's experienced a very different experience now, and she's very happy and relaxed and has a beautiful group of friends that are very supportive now. And so there are times when you have to say, you know what, we've done what we've done. Nothing's going to change. So we need to go where we need to be.
Exactly. And that's why I said that, because, I have no expectations from today other than to speak my worth and, what I think, to stand up. But I feel that, the other party has their own agenda. So, and that's okay, but, I've already prepared, us as a family unit that, it may be time for change, whatever change that is, we'll see. But, at least, and that's exactly why I said that like that, because, yeah.
And you know what's really cool? When you demonstrate this with your kids actually are good about these things too. So my daughter recently had a situation with her employer. So the policy with the employer was, if you get injured, you're meant to go and see the doctor because of all the whole workplace policies and everything. So she pulled a muscle, and we knew it was a pulled muscle, and we knew that that's all the doctor would say. But because their policy was that you have to see the doctor, we went to the doctor so that we were following protocol, right? So she had a shift, and she really, because it was a neck and shoulder, and she was going to have to sort of twist a lot. So she's at the checkout where you go like this all the time, right? So she felt like she really couldn't do her shift. So she rang up and said, I really can't do my shift from when I hurt myself yesterday, and I've gone, I'm going to see the doctor.
Yeah.
Obviously they got themselves into some kind of panic, because we'd only just, sorry, that's my little reminder one to make sure I have not missed Fajr prayer. Within minutes of us coming out of the surgery, there was a phone call, can you come into work? We just want to make sure you're okay, right? And it was funny, normally she would have gone to a meeting like that by herself, but I said to her, do you want me to come too? There was just something in my gut that said go with her. And she thought about it, and then she said, yeah, I think that might be a good idea. So I'm glad I did, because we walked into this situation where they didn't let us or her speak first. And then the senior manager, who she'd never had a conversation with before, her other two managers, so she feels comfortable with, were there. But this one launched into her and said, we've been through all the video footage and we can't see where you injured yourself, and basically like accusing her that she was lying. And you could understand that they're worried about workers' compensation. Now, if they had stopped and asked and heard her side of the story before launching on her, they would have understood that we went to the doctors purely to fulfill protocol, and that it's just a pulled muscle, and that she just has to avoid this and that, lifting heavy things until it feels better. And it would have been it, but instead she was attacked and then told, are you sure you didn't come into work with the injury already, and all this sort of thing. And then she started to doubt herself, and so started to go, well, I'm not sure now, and because she was being intimidated. So in the moment, because we were just so stunned by that, in the end, because I didn't know whether I was meant to speak up or not, but in the end I said, well, look, we just went to the doctors because that was your protocol. The doctor said this, it's all good, she's fine to work, all that sort of thing. And we left, and then she had a big meltdown. She was really strong all the way through it. So she decided that she didn't want to work in a place where that was the way they were going to handle things. And I completely understood that she was 16 years old, and how dare they talk to a young person. I'm so glad I was there. Imagine if I hadn't have been there with her.
That's right.
And helped her unpack it, because I basically said to her, because she had no clue why she would have been attacked. And I said, look, there's this thing called work cover, and as a manager, he was the top manager, he would have got in trouble with the big bosses because of this and that. And that's where he's coming from, a place of fear, and that certainly wasn't okay. So I was able to help explain it to her. So she said, I don't want to work there anymore. I said, oh, well, when you find yourself another job, quit. And she found herself another job within a week.
Oh.
So she's got another job, alhamdulillah. But the thing that I was so proud of her for was when she wrote her resignation letter, it was so mature. Like, she wrote this letter where she said, I found another opportunity, which I think is going to help me expand my customer service skills and my creativity, because she's going to be working in a cake shop and she's going to learn how to decorate cakes and things.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, very cool. And she said, so I'm handing my resignation. And she said, there's a few things I'd like to tell you first. and she told them all the things that weren't okay. And she said that she didn't think that it was okay to intimidate a young teen in the way that they had intimidated her. And the way she wrote it, it was so mature, it was so articulate, it wasn't emotional, it was beautifully done. Like she asked me, would I change anything? And there was nothing in there to change. And I thought that's what happens when you're away, when you're their ally. They learn how to stand up for themselves in a mature way.
Exactly. And that's so true.
And so empowering to be able to do that.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. And I see that with my son at the moment. Like, had this been last year, he wouldn't have been able to walk away. But this year, he's just gone, oh, I don't like the way that you're treating me. I'm not going to play with you anymore. And when he's told me that the first time, I was like, good on you, being able to be at the other end of the stick, that was really good to hear. So what the maturity that comes from it.
Yeah. So I think the essence of what we're talking about is there's so much hope. There's so much hope. That it starts with us, starts with us, and then that flows on to our children naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So no one sent us any questions, so I guess they don't have any questions. We must have done an awesome job of explaining our topic, right? Hey, Daniela.
Inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. So we've had Halima join us, Halima from the UK. Shakira is saying, wow, beautifully handled, subhanAllah. Yeah, I know. I was very impressed with her, mashallah. She's turning into such a mature young lady, mashallah. And
it really is.
What I mean, there's still some signs of where she's internalized some oppression from the early days when we were in a very abusive situation with her dad. And I can see that there's some areas that some wrinkles to iron out there, right? But I have such strong hope that she won't fall into the traps I fell into as an adult, into a marriage of being, dominated and not listened to, and well, I was abused, but that she will, inshallah, marry someone that will respect her and as she deserves to be respected, because one of the key things about people who are oppressors is they can tell when it's somebody that, and I'm not saying they're doing this in a conscious way, I'm not suggesting that at all, it's behavior patterns. Like, it's a comfort thing. Like, it comes across as they'll feel comfortable with somebody that they can sense will be controlled. And so if they sense somebody is not controllable, an abusive person is not going to be attracted to that person.
Mm.
So the more your kids grow up confident in themselves and confident to speak up for themselves, the less they're going to attract those people into their lives, because those people just won't be interested in them, because they know that it just doesn't work. And it's not a conscious thing. I'm not for a minute suggesting we walk around labeling people and that sort of thing. It's a behavioral pattern dynamic that comes from their internalized oppression as well. You know, they just haven't had the opportunity to understand that their controlling behavior is coming from certain insecurities that they have that have come most likely stemmed from their childhood either. So there's hope for people like that too. Like there's hope for the oppressed and the oppressor with this understanding. And there's so much hope for our children in this world if we can do that work on ourselves first, so that we're helping them not internalize oppression. That's the key, is protecting that Fitrah that they've born with, you know, subhanAllah.
Exactly.
This was an awesome discussion, Daniela, and a great prelude to my masterclass that I'm doing. I think it's this time. Well, it will be Monday, Tuesday, depending what part of the world you're in. Not next week, but the week after. So it's about 10 days or so away. We haven't quite finished doing the landing pages and everything, but we'll create events on Facebook and that sort of thing. So if someone's interested in unpacking how you parent children in a world of oppression, that's what the topic is going to be. And it's pretty much basically taking what we've talked about today, but just unpacking it step by step. Yeah, so thank you, Daniela. Brilliant discussion. Really, I think a timely discussion with what's going on in the world, alhamdulillah.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Jazakallah for having me.
Well, Yaki, for being a part of the discussion and being brave on Facebook Live with everybody watching. And Jazakallah khair to all of you who have been here listening. And if you're listening to the recording as well, please, you know, make sure you share this with as many people as possible, because this is important, that we are teaching our children how to, or working on ourselves and teaching our children how to be advocates in life. And before we go, if you can do lots of love hearts and comments of salam and sharing and everything, what will happen is Facebook will share this post more. So the way it works with the algorithms is the more engagement with the post, the further it will go. And this is such an important message. So if you could share the love by hitting the love hearts as many times as you possibly can, share a takeaway of what you took away from it, whether you thought it was beneficial or not. The more we do that, the more this post will be shared with others, and others will benefit, inshallah, if you found it beneficial, of course, assuming you found it beneficial. Oh, look, all the love's coming in now, mashallah. Awesome. Thank you, sisters. That's brilliant. But do share it as well, please. Share it to your personal pages. Share it with your friends, inshallah. All right. So, Jazakallah khair. We're going to sign off here. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. May Allah make this of benefit to the ummah, and may He accept it from us.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Okay.